At the reunion, he was a total success, showing up with his gorgeous girlfriend. "If you hadn't let him go," she said, her voice dripping with a touch of malice, "you'd be Mrs. Sterling by now." He sat across from me, his arm possessively around his girlfriend, a cool indifference in his eyes. "That was a lifetime ago," he said, his tone dismissive. The others, always up for some drama, started egging us on. Under his gaze, I quietly covered the scar on my wrist and forced a smile. "Yeah, we're ancient history," I said, the words feeling like sandpaper in my mouth. "Didn't she dump him back then?" someone asked, the gossip mill turning as his girlfriend went to powder her nose. "She was me, Tiffany." Ethan, sitting across the table, wore a faint, almost mocking smile, his eyes chillingly distant. It was the first time we'd seen each other in 6 years, since our breakup. And it was completely unexpected. I'd only come because the reunion organizer said Ethan wasn't going to make it. But here he was, the picture of success, one of the city's top young entrepreneurs, a real golden boy who made it big after his MBA. Suit tailored, hair perfectly styled, the watch on his wrist, probably worth more than my car. Everyone was practically worshipping the ground he walked on. I, on the other hand, was a bit of a mess. "Yeah, she called it off," Ethan said, answering the question with a calm, measured tone. People started speculating, their eyes darting between us. All the usual stuff: I was a gold digger, couldn't handle the grind, backed the wrong horse, and ultimately lost everything. "Tiffany, heard you were with some guy who ended up in the slammer, right?" Some dude snickered. "And you're stuck with his debts? You here to hit us up for cash?" As the barbs flew, I noticed Ethan's steady, piercing gaze fixed on me, not saying a word. I managed a weak laugh, not bothering to dignify their jabs. The door opened, and Ethan's girlfriend, a blonde named Brittany, walked back in. Sensing the weird vibe, she smiled. "What did I miss?" Ethan's demeanor instantly changed, his arm sliding around her shoulders, his voice warm. "Nothing, just catching up with old friends." She sat down, her eyes settling on me, her smile revealing a dimple. "Ethan's mentioned you. You know, if you hadn't let him go, you could have been Mrs. Sterling by now." A wave of awkwardness washed over the table. Back in the day, my family was pretty well off, and I was the popular girl, the one everyone fawned over. That kind of jealousy doesn't just disappear with time. It just gets buried until they get an opening to dig it up. Ethan spoke up, cutting through the tension, his voice cool but firm. "That's all in the past." Everyone quieted down, knowing the big guy didn't want to keep talking about it. Brittany raised her glass towards me. "Thank you for your sacrifice. Please come to the wedding. We'd love to see you there." I kept my hand wrapped around my wrist, where that old scar lived, and just managed a strained congrats. "Why didn't you set the record straight?" my bestie, Chloe, asked, her voice laced with indignation over the phone. The reunion ended early, and I was standing out in the frigid night, the icy air turning my breath into plumes. "He has a girlfriend." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "A girlfriend?" Chloe sounded incredulous. "Yeah." The last of the classmates trickled off, the streetlights casting long shadows on the snow-covered ground, making it look like shattered glass. "It's just too bad that after all this time and effort, you finally see him and..." "Chloe, nobody waits around forever. Some things you just can't say, not when they're so far in the rearview. It just feels desperate and pathetic." The cold wind was making my eyes water, so I blinked back the stinging. I'm letting it go. Even after struggling my way out of the hole, hoping to show up like I was doing alright, it was all a day late and $1 short. "Okay, let's talk when you get back," she said. The temperature was well below freezing, and taxis were scarce. My hands were numb by the time I managed to get one to accept a ride request. My phone showed waiting for driver. When I heard the distinct click-clack of high heels behind me, followed by a woman's soft, honeyed voice, "Honey, the snow is gorgeous. It's cold out here, go wait in the car," I'll be there in a sec, Ethan's unmistakable baritone said. Okay, but hurry, Brittany said. As she walked past me, she gave me a knowing look. Then she opened the car door, and I saw the glint of the bracelet on her wrist, an heirloom from Ethan's family. It used to be mine. I had someone deliver it to him after we broke up. She was not just a girlfriend, she was a fiancée. Everyone else had gone, leaving just him and me. The cab still hadn't arrived. Ethan was standing right behind me, silent. We stood there, the streetlights throwing our overlapping shadows. I was suddenly transported back to the night of our breakup. Ethan was on his way to see me when he got into a car accident. His friend called me, his voice harsh. Ethan's at the hospital. Is he in danger? I asked. So what if he's not? You wouldn't come, right? Just take care of him. Tiffany, he got into that international program, he's gonna go places, why can't you wait? You're so obsessed with money. Have you forgotten everything he's done for you? His friend yelled at me. Someone grabbed the phone from him and hung up. It was me who left him. He had every right to hate me. How much do you owe? Ethan's voice cut through my memories. It was cold, harsh. It's none of your business. I took a breath of cold air. The alcohol was making my throat burn, and I suddenly coughed, hard. The cold air sliced through my windpipe, and I doubled over, gripping the lamppost, my stomach rebelling against the wine I'd drunk. My eyes were watering from the pain. Ethan stood beside me, watching with cool indifference. The cab finally pulled up. The driver leaned out, going to the estates? Yes. I straightened up, catching my breath, and reached for the car door, when someone grabbed my arm and pulled me around. I slammed into Ethan's chest, and he asked, "Why would you be going there?" The estates was a super rich neighborhood, not easy to get into. I tried to push him away, but he gripped my wrist, his skin hot against mine. My heart skipped a beat. I tried to pull free, looking up at Ethan's dark, unreadable face. What do you want, Ethan? He tightened his lips, his black eyes steady, giving nothing away. The cold wind whipped around us, messing up my hair. I forced a smile, knowing exactly what he was thinking. You think I'm hustling, making dirty money, don't you? Is $5,000 a month enough? He cut me off, his voice flat. What are you talking about? Ethan's eyes flashed with a hint of cold amusement. You need cash, right? 5,000, 10,000, whatever you need, just name your price. My hand flew up and slapped him hard. The sound echoed in the empty street. A woman gasped in the distance, her car door slamming as she ran towards us. Get on with your life, don't try to get in my way, I said, then got into the cab. You hit him? Chloe handed me a mug of hot water. Yeah, he wanted to make me his little sugar baby, I said, sinking into the sofa, trying to ride out the waves of stomach cramps. I slowly sipped the water. After a while, I bolted to the bathroom, where I threw up again. Chloe patted my back. Your stomach can't handle alcohol, Tiffany? I caught my breath, wiped my mouth, my throat burning. After all this time, was it even worth it? I looked at myself in the mirror, my lashes wet, my black hair clinging to my forehead, my face pale. Chloe's voice was distant. If it wasn't for you breaking it off, he wouldn't be where he is today. I thought of Ethan's fiancée. She seemed so bright and cheerful, and I remembered that I used to be like that too. But then I got trashed, and by the time I climbed out of the wreckage, everything had changed. As Chloe finished her work at the estates, we walked back to our crummy apartment. I got a call from Ethan's friend. Tiffany, if you're in a tight spot, I could get you a job. I waited to see what else he'd say. They're getting married next month. Brittany's a really nice girl, she comes from money. I won't bother him anymore, you can relax, I said. He paused, trying to explain, we just want to see Ethan happy. Yeah, I said. Everyone who had been on my side was now on Ethan's. The call ended, and Chloe was on the verge of tears. They don't know anything. It's okay. Since I'd be sticking around for a while, I found a job nearby. At the interview, the HR rep looked at me suspiciously. You have a history of depression? That was in the past, I'm good now. I have a doctor's note, I said. Other companies turned me down the minute I mentioned it. This place was small, and I got a call that evening, offering me the job. I thought the reunion was going to be the last time Ethan and I would cross paths. Then, 3 days later, Ethan showed up and became my boss. And my desk was moved right outside his office door. I refuse. Okay. Ethan didn't even look up. Submit your resignation to HR. I laughed. You're going to fire me because I don't want to move my desk? He stopped writing and finally looked up at me. I'm just giving you a choice. Or did you think I was after something else? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I remembered Chloe and her argument with the landlord over the rent, and just managed to say, I trust that Mr. Sterling won't do something like that. Ethan gave a small nod. Thanks. Close the door on your way out. And turn your chair to face away from me. I don't want to see your face. I didn't say anything to that. We barely spoke in the days that followed. Then, a week later, there was a company team building event. As the new girl, I was pressured into drinking a lot. Don't you get paid if you don't drink, Tiffany? Don't worry, we'll make sure you get home safe. We're all girls here, my boss said, laughing. So with a final toast from my boss, I drank the last of my glass and passed out cold. The next morning, I woke up in a massive bed. The sun was pouring through the windows. I sat up, the covers falling away, revealing that I was wearing a soft bathrobe. I froze, then got up and walked out of the room. In the bright living room, Ethan was reading the morning paper, also in a hotel bathrobe. He glanced up when he saw me. You're awake. Breakfast is on the table, go get some more sleep when you're done. A wave of panic swept through me. What happened? Ethan tossed the newspaper on the table, slightly parting the collar of his robe, revealing a hickey. Unfortunately, it was you who made the first move. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I didn't remember a thing from the previous night. No way. Ethan placed a contract in front of me, my thumbprint on the bottom. It was a contract agreeing to be his mistress, for which he would pay me $10,000 a month. There is no way that's my thumbprint. Really? Ethan chuckled. Are you sure? His calm, direct gaze made me speechless. He ignored my discomfort, taking out a recorder. Last night, I recorded your little monologue. Tiffany, would you like to hear about your dirty little thoughts? I shuddered, like I was falling into a pit. A horrible wave of shame crashed over me. I would have been embarrassed if they were still a secret, but now that they were out in the open, they were a confession, and I was a criminal. Ethan's eyes were lowered, so I couldn't see his expression. Wanting to be with a man who's engaged, that's pretty pathetic, Tiffany. Maybe we should let other people hear this. I clenched my hands until my nails cut into my skin. Are you trying to get back at me? Yes, he said, without any hesitation. You made my life hell. Why should yours be easy? You have two options. Either honor the contract, or I'll share the recording. The clock ticked, beating against my eardrums. My lips were dry, and I said, then just share the recording. His eyes went dark. I won't be anyone's mistress, I said numbly. Ethan stared at me, laughing. Tiffany, who do you think you are? Do you even have a choice? In the bathroom, I found my clothes, all tangled up. Ethan's clothes were folded neatly on a chair by the door, the picture of order. The sight stung. I changed quickly, then left the hotel. Chloe called, her voice tight. They want $500,000. The sky was overcast, the sun hidden behind the clouds. Chloe had never saved much money, and I only had a little. They said if we don't pay, they'll expose you, and they won't tell you where your mom's things and ashes are. I'll try to get an advance, and then borrow some, maybe I can get it all by the end of next month. Okay. I hesitated, then punched in a number. The line was silent for a long time before someone answered. Tiffany, what is it? I exhaled into the phone. Dr. Jones, I'm sorry to bother you. Dr. Jones sounded very busy, and it was a while before he went somewhere quiet. Are you having problems? He asked. I took a breath. Can I borrow $40,000? It was the first time I had ever asked for money, and it made me feel hot all over. The line went dead. Dr. Jones, emergency surgery. Got it. I hadn't gotten my hopes up, ready for him to hang up. Send me your bank info, it'll be in your account today. Then the call ended. The sky was still gray. The cold silence suddenly turned warm. That evening, my boss knocked on my desk. There's a dinner with a client, you're coming. Hours earlier, I had asked for an advance on my salary. Plus the money I had borrowed, and my savings, it came to exactly $500,000. Walking into the private room, I saw Ethan. He was chatting with everyone, looking completely in control. The light from the crystal chandelier highlighted his sharp profile. My boss pushed me forward. All eyes turned to me. Mr. Sterling, is she with your company? Ethan glanced at me casually. Yeah, she's new. What kind of newbie does Mr. Sterling personally bring out? And she's gorgeous. The room filled with laughter. Then we all sat down. My boss made sure I sat next to Ethan. Be smart tonight, drink if you have to. Mr. Sterling, can she handle her alcohol? Or not? One of them asked, subtly. My boss answered before Ethan could speak, she's a pro. Then he shoved a drink in front of me. To start the evening. Ethan watched, a faint smile on his lips. I lifted the glass, held my breath, and downed it. The burning liquor surged down my throat, setting my stomach on fire. Everyone cheered, ready to pounce, when Ethan changed the subject. Where were we? Let's keep going. The atmosphere grew more lively, and people offered Ethan a drink, but he said his stomach was acting up. My boss would find ways to make sure they landed in my glass. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and went to the restroom. I turned on the faucet and dry heaved, my hair falling out of place, getting wet in the sink. I texted Chloe, then sank onto the counter, my eyes closed, trying to catch my breath. I heard footsteps outside the door. Then, the door opened. I thought it was another woman using the restroom, but it was Ethan's voice, cool as ever. Can't handle your booze. I pushed myself to my feet, trying to walk past him. He grabbed my arm, pulling me back. His hand went to my neck, sending shivers through me. Let go of me. My throat was raw from the acid, making each word hurt. Ethan dragged me in front of the mirror, forcing me to look at my reflection. Look at yourself. Walking out like this, someone's bound to take advantage. My eyes were glassy, my cheeks red, my hair a mess, and my collar was open. Through the mirror, Ethan was looking at my body with undisguised intensity. I closed my eyes, trembling. Who's more likely to take advantage than you? Ethan laughed, then kissed my ear. Come home with me tonight, okay? Go to hell. He blocked my mouth, devouring the air in my lungs. My blood was boiling like lava, surging through my veins. My vision was blurry, and the water seemed to be behind a veil. One by one, the droplets felt like sulfuric acid. I was gasping, and I was hitting him as hard as I could. I was being dragged back to the darkest time in my life. I felt like I was staring at the world through a wall. Ethan, can't you just let me go? I felt like I was falling, being dragged deeper and deeper. It hurt, I think, but I couldn't feel it. Tiffany. Ethan was calling me. Not with the eyes that wanted me dead. He was panicked. I couldn't tell if it was the Ethan from the past, or the Ethan of the present. I don't want to see you ever again, I said, as I continued to fall. The fever hit hard. I was in and out of it, my body aching as I tried to keep myself warm. Outside, the wind was howling, and I started dreaming. I was on Ethan's back. "Ethan, what if I die?" I asked. He was walking steadily, trying to soothe me. "Don't talk nonsense, it's just a fever. You'll get a shot, then you'll be all better." "Hey, can you make ends meet?" "Shots cost money," I said. "It's okay." "How is it okay? How many jobs are you working?" He didn't answer, putting me down at the nurse's station. Then, he squatted down and looked me in the eye. "As long as you're safe, I'm fine." I huddled in my jacket. "When Mom and Dad stop fighting, I'll pay you back." He gently touched my hair. "Trust me, we'll have money someday." But I didn't stay safe, like he hoped I would. The night before he left for the competition, I walked into my parents' bedroom and saw my dad with another woman. That was when my life started to fall apart. Then came my parents' vicious arguments, my father skipping town, leaving the family with a mountain of debt. One night, the debt collectors came. The lights swung back and forth, their excited shouting, the physical pain, their touch, and my mother's screams all became a blur in my mind. It was all moving so fast. My mother was driven to suicide in the bathroom. Chloe found me and took me to South City. One rainy day, I was in the hospital, wearing black, my mind barely there. "She has a family history of depression. Does she have any family?" Chloe looked at me worriedly. "She has a boyfriend, but he's out of town." "Tell him to come," the doctor said. "She's very high risk. It's going to be a long battle. You need to prepare yourselves." I wasn't even capable of getting justice. Chloe and I were lost. The same day, Ethan's name was at the top of the competition list. He won a spot in an international program. He called. The line was static. "Tiffany," Ethan said, his voice so gentle. "I did it. I'll marry you in 3 years." I stared at the steel gate. I was never going to go home. "Ethan, I can't be with you anymore," I finally managed to say, fighting back tears. He stopped breathing. "Why?" I opened my mouth and hesitated. He had such a bright future. How could I keep him down here? Outside, I could see a girl through the fence, crying silently. The boy looked numb and disgusted. I saw love disappear. It was heartbreaking. The wind picked up, revealing bruises on my neck. I wiped away my tears. "Ethan, take care, we're over." I could hear the beeping of the monitors. The sun was coming through the blinds, making the sofa look gold. I blinked, trying to shake off the nightmare, and sat up. A man was on the sofa, quietly peeling an apple. His hands were graceful and nimble. Soon, there was a perfectly peeled apple. It was Ethan. He heard me move, looked up, and pressed the call button. The doctor came in quickly, checking my pupils, then told Ethan, "She's not getting enough nutrition, you should add more protein to her diet." Ethan nodded. "Thanks." The door closed. He went to my bed, offering me the apple. "Don't think about anything, just get better." I got out of bed and started looking in the closet for my phone. It was gone. So was my outside clothes. He just watched me from across the room. "Ethan, what are you trying to do?" I was standing there, barefoot, the sun streaming through the window, the glass reflecting my tired face. "You don't know what I want?" Ethan put the apple on the table, pulled out a tissue, and dried his hands. "I want you." He sat in the light, staring at me, his eyes burning with desire and shame. I was shaking. "Ethan, you can't do this to me." Ethan got up, walked up to me, and smoothed my hair. "Why not?" "I have someone else I care about. Stop harassing me." "Do you?" Ethan's face was devoid of emotion. He cupped my face and leaned in close, stopping an inch away from my lips. I couldn't pull away, so I closed my eyes and flinched. Ethan laughed, his voice cool. "Tiffany, you're lying." The private hospital was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forests. I couldn't leave, and I couldn't contact anyone. I tried to ask the nurses for help, but they said they couldn't do anything. Ethan visited every day. Most of the time it was in the evening. He always looked tired, but he'd come and say hello. I did not want to be near him, but he didn't force me. Lately, I'd been dreaming about the past. Back when I was constantly saying Ethan's name. "Ethan, you're going to be rich," I'd tell him. Ethan would roll his eyes. "What kind of milk do you want today?" "Banana." Then he'd skip class to buy me banana milk. Then came college. Rumors started flying about him and one of the cheerleaders. I took the subway and sat outside his dorm, crying. Ethan showed up in his pajamas and wiped away my tears. "Stop crying. If you want me, I'm yours. You're the only one." "That's not how you propose," I said. He paused and pulled me close. "I love you." Back then, we never would have imagined that years later, we would be in this place. "I'm getting married tomorrow." The sun hadn't set yet. Ethan's voice dragged me back to reality. "Do you have anything you want to say to me?" I was staring at him, holding a half-empty glass of milk. And I realized that I was dreaming so much, because I was trying to say goodbye to Tiffany and Ethan. The TV was showing his pictures with Brittany, the perfect couple. That had been our dream. But now I had nothing. "Congrats," I said. "Have a great life." Ethan's hand jerked, cutting himself with the knife. He stared at the blood, then laughed. "It's okay, it's just a formality. Do you want kids? I have no problem with it." "Ethan, just stop. We can't do this, can we?" I asked, wearily. "Can't we just let it all go?" Ethan dropped the knife back into the basket and stared at me, the corners of his lips curling. "Just let it go? Why? You started this, and now you want to quit. I'm supposed to be okay with that? Am I just some dog?" I closed my eyes, trying to get rid of the sun's glare. "I'll give it back to you then." Ethan stiffened. "What did you say?" I stared at the setting sun. "If you don't want me to be okay, I'll just die." He grabbed my chin, pulling my head back, his eyes burning. "Tiffany, are you out of your mind? If you're so keen on dying, why didn't you do it then?" I don't know when he left. Later that night, Ethan's friend, Jack, stormed in. "What did you promise, Tiffany?" I was shocked. "Do you know how much it's going to cost Ethan if he breaks off the engagement?" "You're an adult, stop acting like you did before, just letting Ethan deal with it. Can't you think about him?" What? Jack laughed. "Ethan might have to call off his wedding because of you. You're gonna ask me what happened?" My ears were ringing. He was calling me out because he didn't know what to do. He was acting like I wanted this. You know what, it's never enough. He never can get away from you, he always comes back. Jack. Tiffany. Jack was shaking. "If you didn't come back, would this have happened?" The wind was biting, freezing my senses. My ears were ringing, I couldn't hear anything. His eyes were full of hate. Jack, he wouldn't let me go. Jack's face went cold. "When this is over, I'll make sure you leave." The office building was lit up late into the night. Jack dragged me inside. The press conference had already started. Ethan sat calmly under the lights. "Is it true you called off the wedding because of another woman?" He was composed. "There are some differences between Brittany and I. We have mutually decided to split." Jack's face was tight. "But it is rumored you are rekindling a relationship with an old flame." Ethan said calmly, "Those are just rumors. If there aren't any other questions, the conference is over." When he stood up, someone yelled, "There she is. That's her." All the cameras were suddenly pointed at me. I was caught in the spotlight, lost and bewildered. The reporters swarmed, and I was quickly trapped. "Are you involved with Ethan Sterling? Did you break up their wedding?" The cameras flashed. Ethan's smile disappeared, and he started pushing his way through the crowd towards me. "No. I didn't," I said weakly, but I was drowned out. "We have some breaking news." A reporter held up a phone, and I could hear my voice, crying and slurring my words, "Ethan, I love you." It was the recording. I was terrified. I never thought things could get any worse. "She's a mistress." "Disgusting." The murmurs hit me like a slap. All the blood drained from my face. "I'm sorry. Jack, take her away." Ethan pushed through the crowd. My vision went blurry, and all I heard was the person say, "Her father was in debt, her mother committed suicide, she has a family history of depression, and she was in a mental hospital for 5 years. She's crazy." The crowd gasped. "Why would a psycho be out in public? She's sick. Why doesn't she just die?" Ethan stopped and looked up at me. He was stunned. Disbelieving. I sat there, numb. "Tiffany." Ethan was calling me, his voice shaking. I knew what was coming. I was just waiting for the axe to fall. She was also assaulted. That was the last piece of the puzzle. The moment I heard it, Ethan's face went white. 9. Ethan's perspective. After that night, Ethan hasn't spoken. The blinds were closed for 3 days, and no light came into the room. His phone was filled with missed calls, but he didn't open them. It was like time had stopped for him. He sat there, his head down, lifeless. He could remember the night Jack took Tiffany away, his cold voice echoing in the dark. "We all want her to live, and you, Mr. Sterling, are the only one who can undo everything we've worked so hard for." Chloe was being held back by security, yelling, "Ethan, do you know that she gets sick if she doesn't take her medicine? Locking her away is like killing her." Depression. Mental hospital. Those words felt like needles, twisting in his brain, pulling on his nerves. Jack knocked on the door, opening it a crack. "Are you okay, man?" "Why?" Ethan's voice was raspy. The pain in his chest was excruciating. Jack hesitated. "I'm sorry, I didn't think it was necessary to check it out, so." "It was false, right?" Ethan asked softly. "Jack, when you told me she was in Europe with other men, Tiffany was in a hospital in South City." "I'm sorry, man, I didn't know." His words sounded empty. He knew he couldn't blame Jack. Maybe if he'd looked into it, it would never have happened. Ethan didn't have the energy to listen to his excuses. Chloe opened the door, ignoring the secretary. The light made Ethan squint, but he didn't try to stop them. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, I couldn't stop her." "Leave us," Ethan said. The secretary closed the door, leaving them in the darkness. Chloe was standing far away, as if she didn't want to touch him. "Mr. Sterling, there are some things you should know." The wind was whistling through the crack in the window. Ethan sat there, listening quietly. He knew that he was being punished. Last year, when it was Tiffany's birthday, I asked her who she liked best. She said, first was her mom, second was Ethan. Ethan closed his eyes. By that time, her condition had stabilized. She just had to take a little pill every day, and she'd be normal. So, this year, I brought her back to get her mother's things. Chloe's eyes were red. She said that the breakup wasn't clean, so she wanted to see you. She thought it would be enough just to see you, a successful entrepreneur. Because she knew that she wasn't good enough. Ethan, wasn't she good enough? Do you know how you won the competition? Ethan's hands tightened. It was already decided. But Tiffany wrote an appeal, and that's how you got the spot. But she offended many people. When her dad left, her and her mother were bullied. He felt like something was squeezing his heart. Was that why? Chloe kept going. You were out of town for a week, so you didn't know that everything changed. Her family fell apart, her dad left with his mistress, and then the debt collectors were after Tiffany and her mother. Her mom killed herself, and Tiffany was left alone, then she got sick. I couldn't let her out of my sight. She was a shell of herself. You were in an accident, and she begged me to let her die. How do you think she could get over that? Ethan's face was like stone. He'd been punishing her, wanting to see her pain. He remembered making her drink, leading her into his room, then forcing her to admit her feelings. He tried to make her his mistress, and then locked her in a private hospital. He'd asked her if she was crazy, and why she didn't die. He thought that she still loved him, but now he realized that she was asking why he was so cruel to her. Why? Didn't you tell me? Chloe started to cry. How could we? She was barely alive, and the only thing she wanted was for you not to suffer because of her. She thought your education was everything. It was her choice. She just wanted you to be okay. Ethan, did she deserve that? Did she deserve that? He was the one who hurt her, who wanted to see her suffer. We tried everything to make her want to live, and we found the only thing that worked. Ethan was afraid to hear the answer. Chloe smiled bitterly. Your name? She always remembered her rich entrepreneur. When I left South City, I joked to Chloe that I'd never come back. But I was wrong. I was sick again. South City was dry in the winter, usually it'd be icy rain, but it was snowing. The nurses were saying, it's cold this year, the weather isn't made for humans. The holidays were approaching, and outside the trees were bare. I put my face against the window. There's someone outside. He's been standing out there all day. Isn't he cold? Chloe walked past me with a glass of milk. Oh, is he? I guess he's fine. She wasn't her usual self. Even Dr. Jones was off. So I was trying to be extra quiet. Chloe stopped, realizing she'd scared me, and softened her voice. Drink the milk, then you can take your pills in an hour. Dr. Jones said he wants to take you out to build a snowman tonight. I took a couple more looks at the person, they looked familiar. Chloe pulled the blinds. Stop looking, you'll go blind. Okay. I went back to bed, took my pills, and started playing on my phone. I could hear Chloe and Dr. Jones talking outside. Then he came in. I put my phone away, I took my medicine. The room filled with the smell of disinfectant. Dr. Jones looked at me and then at my face. I won't tell you off for playing games. I turned red and pulled out my phone. How did you know I was playing games? I play too. I know the music. Dr. Jones washed his hands, put down his coat, and looked at me in the mirror. Aren't you going to get dressed? We're supposed to be building a snowman. He was a thoracic surgeon. I met him in the fall. It was a sunny day, and I was trying to grab a ball of yarn from outside the fence. Dr. Jones walked by and looked down at me. I was out of breath. Can you help me? He looked at the sign. You can't touch anything that could be dangerous. When I didn't move, he asked, what do you want to do? Cat's cradle. Dr. Jones glanced at his watch. Okay, I'll play with you, then I'll take the yarn away. His lunch break was short. I reached out to him through the fence, and we played for a while. When he was about to leave, I said, thank you. I ran into him a couple of times after that. He was always busy. Then one day, he came back and handed me a string. I'm sorry, I was busy. After that, he would start to talk to me. You're really quiet. Yeah, I can't talk much. Why? I'm sick, and I'm not going to say anything good. I shouldn't unload my emotions on other people. Dr. Jones looked at me, and didn't say anything. He started coming more often. Sometimes he looked tired. I learned a few jokes and told them to him. He always looked at me with kindness. He asked me, "Tiffany, what do you wish for?" "I wish everyone was happy, including me." I got changed, and when Dr. Jones had put on his coat, he held my hand and we went downstairs. There was a security door every few feet. He was the only one who could take me out. It was snowing, and my hat quickly turned white. Dr. Jones handed me a shovel. "Don't push yourself." "Okay." The cold air was making me feel good, and I walked around the fountain. Then I saw Ethan, standing there, his eyes bloodshot, looking at me. "Ethan?" I was surprised. He moved his lips. "Tiffany, I'm sorry." Back then, I would have snapped back, "What are you sorry for?" Now, I just kept looking at the shovel. "It's okay. I'd been through so much." Ethan came closer and got down on his knees. "How can you say that it's okay? Tiffany, please, say something." I thought for a second. "I hope that we're all healthy in the new year." Ethan's face lost all its color. He was crying. "Please, don't say that to me." I touched his face. I wanted to have one last clean meeting, but it all went wrong. "I'm sorry, it was my fault," Ethan said. "If I had." "It wasn't your fault. It was my decision to leave you," I said quietly. "At the reunion, I asked the organizer if you were going, and I only went because you weren't." I don't know why he lied. "I just wanted to hear something from you, to see that you were okay." Ethan started crying harder. "I'm sorry, it was all on purpose." "Oh." I smiled sadly. "I'm sorry, I didn't protect you when you needed it," Ethan said, noticing the scar on my wrist. "You don't have to be sorry. I don't want to chain you up. Years from now, if we were fighting, we would be counting whose fault it is." I wiped away the snow that was on his lashes. "Ethan, I'm glad you did so well." "But I told you that I'd make money for you," Ethan said. "Without you, why would I want those things?" I blinked. "My scarf cost $100, it's enough." Ethan looked empty. "We can't go back, can we?" "Ethan, you have your life, and I have my life. I'm not going back to the city." How could I forget those words? We all had memories. I'd been dragged through the mud. If I went back, every step would be like walking on a knife blade. That would be more painful than ending a relationship. Ethan took a breath and held my hands and warmed them. "I'm sorry for the recording. I made you say that. I didn't touch you that night." My eyes started to burn. "Ethan, then say sorry to me. Say you're sorry." He was in pain, but he wanted to remember my face. "I'm sorry." I patted his shoulder and didn't say, "It's okay." "Ethan, I hope you have a long and happy life." It was snowing harder and harder. I turned and started walking, being pushed around by the wind. The wind and snow were all that I could hear, until Ethan faded away. Dr. Jones was standing under the lamplight, looking at me. I walked over to him. He asked, "What did you see?" I shook the snow off my hat. "Dr. Jones." "Yeah? Thank you." A few days later, I saw Ethan in the news. He'd lost a lot of weight. He told the media everything. He forced me. The recording was made by him. He then posted the contract that he made with Brittany. They agreed to a 2-year engagement, and that they'd split when it was up. It wasn't supposed to be a real marriage. The news was devastating for his company, and all the fame and fortune he had built were gone. Then Jack called. "I'm sorry, Tiffany, I owe you an explanation." He said he had been blind. Brittany leaked everything about me. The debt collectors tried to get $500,000 from me, but when I was taken to the private hospital, they sold all of that to Brittany. He was worried about Ethan, and asked if I could go back. But my answer was the same. I'd said everything I had to say. 3 months later, my condition was stable. The sun was shining, the trees were blooming. Then I could smell the disinfectant. I knew Dr. Jones was coming. Do you have any food? I worked all day, and I need something to eat. He was so busy, he kept eating with me. I took off my scarf, revealing the warm buns. Dr. Jones grabbed one without any shame. I watched until he said, "Why are you staring? You're easy to please." He finished eating. "Have you thought about settling down here?" "Why are you asking?" "Well, I have an apartment for rent." I looked at him. "Are you short of money?" "I don't have any money at the moment, so I can't afford to pay expensive rent." "I'm really cheap," Dr. Jones said seriously. "There are no neighbors, and I get scared." He was hitting on me, but I wasn't sure. The day I left the hospital, I was so happy, I forgot to look at the traffic light and Dr. Jones had to drag me back. I tripped into him. He held onto me. "You?" "Yeah, I'm pursuing you," he said, as if he was talking about the weather. Ba bump. A child was playing a drum in the distance. Ba bump. That was my heart. My voice was shaky, but I looked up at Dr. Jones. "I've loved someone for many years, and I don't know if I can." The wind was messing up his hair. "Tiffany, I've loved someone for a long time too, please, let me try." My eyes filled up. "I'm bad, I've been sick, and my body." "Tiffany, you said that you wanted everyone to be happy, including you." Dr. Jones smiled. "I want that to come true." The wind was blowing. The sun was shining through the trees, lighting up his face. I never thought I'd see spring. 13. Ethan's perspective. The following year, Brittany's company went bankrupt. Everyone who hurt Tiffany was also sent to jail. After a long time, Ethan's company finally started to recover. He was in the office by himself, staring out of the window. It was snowing. It had been 3 weeks since he'd slept properly. He suddenly remembered a year ago, and it had also been snowing. Tiffany showed up at the reunion. She'd looked surprised and anxious when she saw him and Brittany. He dreamed of it. And he would change things. He would break off the engagement and call the police when his boss tried to drug her. He wouldn't make her drink, and he wouldn't say mean things to her. They would finally meet again, and it would be a good meeting. Tiffany would come back, and she'd be crying in his arms. She'd tell him everything, and he'd hold her. He'd propose. Then they'd have a family. And they'd take wedding pictures. Every time he woke up, he was alone, listening to the clock. He knew that time was moving on, and Tiffany wouldn't be a part of his life. She had gone. In South City, she wished that he'd have a good life, and he knew that she was sincere. She said she wouldn't come back. She was sad that they didn't have a better meeting. Her eyes were red. He hurt her, and that was why she had to leave. There was no anger or yelling, and that wish was like a knife that would never leave his heart. He was working long hours, and he had developed a stomach ulcer. It hurt so much. That night, he woke up alone, and the moon was shining outside. He remembered watching the moon with Tiffany. It felt like it was in another life. He suddenly wanted to see her, and booked a flight. A year had passed, and the weather was the same. It was windy and snowy. He found her apartment, and waited. Then he heard Tiffany, and she sounded happy. "That restaurant didn't have any good beef. Next time you can buy me some, and I'll cook for you. Chloe likes it too, let's invite her." Ethan looked over. She was wearing a white hat, or maybe it was pink or gray. It was all covered in snow. She was walking slowly. And next to her was another man, always looking at her. He looked at Ethan and stopped. The men just stared at each other. "Hey, Dr. Jones, did you hear me?" It was the same tone, but she was talking to someone else. Dr. Jones said, "Yeah, you want to cook beef, but last time, you burnt the pot. I haven't bought a new one yet." Tiffany looked sad. "Oh, I'm sorry." Dr. Jones patted her hat. "Go home, your son is waiting." "Where are you going?" "To buy a pot." "Beef too?" "Yeah, I'm going to cook tonight." Tiffany ran back inside. Dr. Jones turned to Ethan. Ethan said, "Congrats." Dr. Jones smiled. "Thank you." He knew that Ethan had misunderstood. Son was the cat they adopted together. But Dr. Jones didn't want to explain. He had his chance last year, when he saw them building a snowman. Whatever had happened, it was over. "How's she doing?" "Stable," Dr. Jones said. "She's really nice, she doesn't get angry, she's really good." Ethan knew that she was happy. Dr. Jones looked at Ethan. "How long have you known her?" 14 years. "You know her better than me. Her birthday is coming up, what should I get her?" "Snacks, anything that's salty, she doesn't like chocolate," Ethan said without any thought. Dr. Jones nodded. "Thank you." 14 years. "You know her better than me." It was the message that Dr. Jones was giving him. If he knew her, why would he hate her? And why would he hurt her? "Ethan?" A familiar voice cut through the wind. Ethan looked over. There she was. Her face was exactly as he remembered. Tiffany was holding an umbrella. "Why are you here?" Ethan's heart ached. She had let him go. He said, "I was here on business. I ran into Dr. Jones, so we were talking." "Business? In her neighborhood?" Tiffany looked confused. Dr. Jones asked, "Why did you come back down?" Tiffany realized why and handed the other umbrella over. "It was snowing too hard, I brought this down for you." She smiled at Dr. Jones. It hurt Ethan. "Would you like to come in?" Dr. Jones asked. Ethan laughed. "No, my flight's tonight. I need to go." Tiffany got into her jacket. "Wait." Then she ran inside. Dr. Jones followed. Ethan waited. It was getting worse. The sky was gray. His stomach started to hurt. Jack called. "Man." He stopped. "Your test came back. It's cancer." Ethan didn't move. He said, "Got it," then he hung up. He just waited, looking at her door. Then he saw the light, and Tiffany was coming down the stairs. Dr. Jones had made her into a cotton ball. She was holding a red box. "I made cookies, you can take them with you." Ethan grabbed them and remembered that Tiffany always loved to bake. They tasted terrible back then. Now they looked amazing. She was never very good at cooking. Ethan used to say that she shouldn't go anywhere near the kitchen. Now, she was a pro. Tiffany said sincerely, "Thanks for donating money." Ethan knew they were helping people with mental health problems. He was only keeping a small part for himself. He said, "No problem." Then he looked at her. "It's cold, go back inside. I won't come here anymore." Tiffany smiled. "Why not? You're gonna win an award, and you have to come." Ethan couldn't speak. She turned away, and her snow boots were making a crunching sound. Then she stopped. "Ethan." He looked at her, his heart beating faster. He wanted her to say something. She just smiled. "Happy New Year." It was just a casual wish. There was no health and happiness. Ethan's heart went cold. "Happy New Year," he replied.